Embers Before Dawn, a novel of the American Revolution. Chapter 1. The Smell of Gunpowder. Massachusetts Colony, Spring 1775. The air in Boston carried the odor of tar, brine, and resentment. Elias Whitmore stood at the edge of Long Wharf, watching red-coated soldiers unload crates stamped with the royal insignia. The harbor water slapped against the pilings in a steady rhythm, indifferent to politics. Gulls wheeled overhead. A British drumbeat echoed faintly across the docks. To most men, the soldiers were authority. To Elias, they were occupation. At 23, Elias was neither merchant nor farmer nor fully a rebel. He was a printer's apprentice, trained in ink and metal type, employed by a small press that had grown increasingly bold in its criticism of Parliament. Words were his weapons, though he had never fired a musket. Yet. He watched as one British officer barked orders. The officer's accent was polished London, sharp consonants, clipped impatience. A boy nearby spat quietly into the water. "Careful," Elias murmured. The boy glanced at him. "They'll hang us all soon enough." Elias said nothing, but he did not disagree. For months, tension had hardened like frost in the colony. Since the Tea Act and the Boston Tea Party, punishment from Britain arrived swiftly. The port had been closed, trade strangled, soldiers quartered among civilians. Parliament insisted it was restoring order. The colonists called it tyranny. Elias returned to the print shop on Queen Street, ducking beneath the low wooden lintel. The press stood in the center like a black iron altar. His employer, Mr. Nathaniel Briggs, hunched over a broadside. "Close the door," Briggs muttered without looking up. Elias obeyed. Briggs slid the paper across the table. The heading read, "A Call to Liberty, an Address to the People of Massachusetts." Elias felt his pulse quicken. "Is this wise?" he asked quietly. Briggs's eyes, hale and sharp, lifted. Wisdom left this city when General Gage marched in. Outside, boots struck cobblestones. Elias imagined the weight of those boots on his own neck. "You'll set the type," Briggs continued. "We print tonight." It was treason. By British law, it was sedition, punishable by imprisonment, or worse. Elias swallowed. "Yes, sir." Chapter 2. Lexington Green, April 19th, 1775. The morning was cold and uncertain. Elias had never traveled beyond Boston's outskirts, yet here he stood on Lexington Green, heart hammering, musket trembling slightly in his grip. He had not meant to join the militia, but when Paul Revere rode through the countryside crying warning of British movement toward Concord, something shifted inside him. Words were no longer enough. Around him, farmers stood in rough formation. Some wore homespun coats, some had no coats at all. Their muskets were mismatched, powder horns worn smooth by years of hunting. Captain John Parker's voice carried low but firm. "Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." Across the field, British regulars advanced in precise formation, crimson coats, white crossbelts, bayonets gleaming faintly in early light. The world narrowed. A bird startled from a tree. Then, a shot. No one ever agreed who fired first, but once smoke erupted, order dissolved. Elias felt sound before he processed it, an explosion that rattled his bones. Men fell. Someone screamed. Powder smoke filled his lungs, acrid and suffocating. He fired blindly. The recoil nearly knocked him backward. Through haze, he saw a man, British or colonial, he could not tell, collapse. It lasted less than 15 minutes. When the smoke thinned, 8 colonial militiamen lay dead. The British marched on. Elias stood frozen among bodies. One farmer he'd spoken to moments earlier now stared upward, eyes wide, chest unmoving. War had begun, and there would be no returning to ink and paper alone.